What's up guys, Firewolf here, giving you a step-by-step tutorial guide on the new Lian Li LANCOOL 217, which launches today. Lian Li sent over this case in a beautiful white color that features real wood accents, 5 pre-installed fans, and a ton of value at an MSRP price of $125. This video is crazy long, but I'll have timestamps so you can feel free to skip ahead or come back whenever you're lost. All the components will be listed in the description down below, along with affiliate links, which help support my channel. But your time is worth more to me, so thank you, and I hope this guide inspires you to start your LANCOOL 217 build and earn a subscribe from you. For the CPU, we're going with a Ryzen 9 7950X3D for amazing gaming performance and productivity. For the GPU, we're going for the MSI Gaming Trio 5080, which is a beautiful all-white card that will look awesome on this LANCOOL 217. The motherboard is going to be the all-white AORUS X870E Pro Ice. Cooling the CPU is going to be the Panorama SE 360 ARGB, which comes with a 6.5-inch curved AMOLED display. Power in this build is going to be the Redragon 1000 watt gold rated PSU in white. For RAM, 32 gigabytes using the G.SKILL Trident Z5 Neo RGB. And finally, a 2TB 990 EVO Plus NVMe storage. The first thing we're setting up is the motherboard. Alright, we're going to quickly set up our motherboard here. In this step, we're going to be installing our CPU, our RAM, and our NVMe SSD. So to install the CPU first, we're going to bring this latch down to the right, all the way up. We're going to lift the cover up, exposing our socket. Then I'm going to take my Ryzen 9 7950X3D. And whenever you're opening your CPU, make sure you don't do it on top of your motherboard because it could potentially hit the board. And whenever you're managing your CPU, you definitely want to be super cautious and careful, of course. And on AM5 processors, you want to locate that top left triangle. And you want to make sure you match these two notches on the actual notches on the CPU socket cover. So we're just going to easily drop it down. A little nudge, letting us know everything is nice. Drop this down, bring this latch down. There's going to be some resistance, but just go ahead and push it all the way down. And then you can take off this cover. I recommend just keeping this just in case. All right, now we have our 7950X3D installed perfectly. Next, we're going to install our RAM. Now we're just only using 2, so we just have to populate the second and fourth slot. So go ahead and bring the latches down. So this is going to be the second slot, or A2, fourth slot, or B2. And then on this motherboard, we have extra latches on the bottom as well that we can push down. Grab your RAM, make sure you double check the notches line up. It's going to be just like this. Then you slide it right on top. Same thing with the second one. Slide it on top. Okay, then I like to apply pressure on the bottom and then top. And just like that, we have our RAM successfully installed. Next up, we're going to install 2 terabytes of the Samsung 990 EVO Plus. And the beauty of this motherboard here is that this main slot over here, all I have to do is just lift this up. This whole piece comes off very easily without having to remove any type of tools. And then if I ever want to access the additional NVMe slots, same thing here, I can just push this to the left and this whole piece cocomes off, revealing 3 additional M.2 slots, which is awesome. Put the heatsink cover back in, and that's pretty much it. I recommend you guys double check your motherboard's manual for any type of lane sharing or anything like that. But if you're just going to use just one NVMe, the main slot is perfectly fine. Make sure you remove any type of stickers. Go ahead and match the notch with the notch on the NVMe slot. And then we're going to angle that in. Push it in. Go ahead and push this all the way down. And that's pretty much it. And then finally, we're going to take our heatsink cover here. Remove the sticker on the bottom, revealing a thermal pad. And then we just drop it back in. Push that back in, and just like that, we have the SSD installed, and now our motherboard is pretty much prepped up and we can install it in the LANCOOL 217. All right, now we're ready to prep out the LANCOOL 217. First thing I'm going to remove is the side glass panel, and there is a little indentation right over here that you can easily pull this towards you. This whole glass panel comes off, and the front panel you can easily remove, comes off very easy and smooth. Let's go ahead and take this front piece out of the way. And then for the back panel, same thing. We have a small little indent over here that we easily pull towards you, and this whole back panel comes out. And for the top panel, we can just lift this whole piece off. There we have the top piece off. And this bottom side mesh cover can also be removed. There's a thumb screw right here that you can easily unscrew. And this whole bottom piece opens up just to give you more space. And then we can start taking this foam piece off. All right, so let's go ahead and flip over the case. And then right on the back, we have this box here. That's going to include a whole bunch of accessories, including our little accessory box that I really appreciate Lian Li for providing in their cases. It gives us really nice compartments to easily break up each screw. And then these two pieces here are the hard drive base. So if you ever need to use hard drives, you can definitely add that on. But I personally don't use hard drives, so that can stay in the box. Let's go ahead and remove this final foam piece on the bottom. All right, and now our case is fully prepared. There's actually one last foam piece here. Almost forgot that one. So now go ahead and lay your case flat down, and then we can go ahead and install our motherboard on top. Before we drop in our motherboard, what I like about the LANCOOL 217 is that it does support back connect motherboards. You'll see the openings here. Now they do include a Phillips socket in case you ever want to move the standoffs to accommodate MATX motherboards, and they also include additional standoffs just in case. So that way it accommodates multiple motherboard form factors, which is awesome. Now let's go ahead and grab our AORUS Pro Ice here. And what I like to do is I like to have my left hand where the IO is at. I like to be very gentle here because keep in mind that we do have fans already pre-installed. So be very, very cautious. Once I get around here, I like to just drop the motherboard all the way down. And then I can start wiggling the motherboard a little bit higher to find that perfect sweet spot. And I believe I just found it. You'll know it's right when you wiggle the motherboard and it won't go anywhere, which is awesome. Inside the accessory box, go ahead and grab yourself 9 motherboard screws that look just like this. And then go ahead and screw all 9 in. And then for the last one, depending on your motherboard, the heatsink might be a little bit too long. So the good thing about the Pro Ice is that I can easily lift this heatsink all the way up, revealing the final screw hole. And then we can easily put the heatsink back in without needing any type of screwdrivers, which is awesome and convenient. Now that we have our motherboard installed, let's go ahead and lift this case up. All right, here's how we're looking with the motherboard already installed on the case. Everything looks nice and clean. So now we're gonna go behind the case and attach all of our case connectors directly to the motherboard. So let's go ahead and flip over the case. Now that we're at the back of the case, all the case connectors are right over here. So you can go ahead and undo the Velcro strap to unleash these. Now, one thing I'm really loving about this case is that if you're gonna get the white color, I love the fact that they made the connectors white as well, matching the whole white aesthetics, which is awesome. So the LANCOOL 217 has a total of 4 separate connectors. Starting off with our front panel connector, this will control the power and reset functionality of the case buttons. And you'll notice that they made this cable short because when you're looking at it from the back side, the front panel connector is going to be on the bottom left. So all you have to do here is take the front panel, go ahead and tuck this right underneath and kind of push it up. Then if you wanted to, with your other hand, you can go ahead and kind of see the cable from here. I don't know if you can see that real quick, but it should be very easy for you to just grab it, pull it all the way there, and then we'll connect that. All right, next connector is going to be our HD audio, which connects the 3.5mm jack of this case. And that's going to be located right over here on the bottom right of your motherboard, looking at it from the back. So a good thing is that we have just enough length here to push this all underneath, just like that. And then the next 2 connectors are going to be your USB connectors. The smaller one is going to be for USB-C, and then the larger one is going to be for the USB-A connectors on the case. For the USB-C on this motherboard is located more on the middle. I'm going to pass the USB-C through this grommet over here. And then for the final USB-A, you can use this grommet right over here and pass it through that way. Now we have all the cables on the inside of the case. Let's go ahead and rotate the case all around. All right, so first connector is going to be our USB-C, and on the Pro Ice motherboard is going to be this connector over here. Reference your motherboard's layout so you know exactly where each one of these go. It only goes one way, so you can go ahead and plug that all the way in. Next thing here is we have our USB-A, and depending on your motherboard, they're usually located on this side, and some motherboards like the USB-C connectors will have the connector facing forward, or they'll have it facing to the side. So this Pro Ice is facing to the side, or there's an additional USB connector located right on the bottom as well. And the option's yours. You might have multiple options, but I'm going to connect it right over here. And the good thing about this anti-sag bracket here is that we have some space to kind of just pass this cable behind this bar. I don't know if you can see that. So that way I can connect this right over here. And we're just going to push that all the way in. All right, now that we have that USB-A connected, we can start tucking some of this cable inside. Next cable to tackle is going to be our front panel connector. You could definitely reach it here, but to make things easy, I'm going to go ahead and remove this fan. And what's great about this case is that it has like these rubber pieces that kind of hold it in place. So I can easily remove this fan without having to unscrew anything. Just gonna flip that real quick just so I can really show you guys exactly what's going on here. All right, so our front panel connector is gonna be located on the bottom right. Now the AORUS Pro Ice does have a very unique connector here. However, most motherboards just have these 9 pins. So all we have to do is just grab our front panel connector, locate the missing pin, and make sure you match that with the pins on your motherboard. Then you can plug it right in. All right, now we have the front panel connected. And then right on the bottom left, we have our HD audio. And same thing here, we have 1 missing pin. We just have to make sure we match it. That way we can plug it in. And now we have the HD audio and the front panel. Then I'm gonna reattach the fan real quick. And slide it back in. Just like that, it makes it very easy to connect these bottom connectors. And I'm going to show you guys later on how to switch these fans on the bottom so that way you can make more room for a vertical mount, which is really nice. All right, so we're back at the back. We do have some excess cable that we can start rerouting. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to grab the bulk of this cable and Velcro strap this over here. That way it stays in place. I'm also going to push this and have it like tamed like this. And then this cable I can probably put the Velcro strap here as well. So I like the fact that this case has a lot of cable management, a lot of Velcro straps already pre-installed so you can easily reroute these cables. And the final thing here is the front panel, and I'm just going to move that in here. Why not? Just to make everything nice and tidy. All right, so we have it nice and managed. So let's go ahead back on the front of the case. Next thing I want to cover is going to be the fan layouts of the LANCOOL 217. Now the beauty of this case is of course the fact that we have 5 pre-installed fans for one price, which is amazing. You can see right on the front, we have the oversized 170mm fans, which you definitely can replace with either 2 140mm or 3 120mm fans with the provided bracket for either the 140 or the 120mm. On the bottom over here, we have 2 120mm reverse blade fans, and then you'll notice over here, empty spot over here, which definitely allows you to add a third 120mm fan by removing this top bracket, or you even have the option to move these 2 fans right underneath to give you enough space to add a riser cable and vertically mount your GPU. I'm going to show you both ways how to do it. In the step where I cover the vertical GPU mount is where I'll reposition these fans to the bottom. But for those of you that want to add that third fan, there's only 2 screws that's covering this cover. Easily unscrew it. Once you have those 2 screw out, you can kind of pick this up and pull it towards you. This whole piece comes off. Now you have the same 4 mounting screw holes where you can attach that third fan. And I just have an SL Infinity here real quick so I can demonstrate to you exactly how that looks like. You see right over there, I can easily fit a third 120mm fan. And keep in mind that to attach that third fan, you are going to have to add these rubber pieces, which are these pieces over here, which is included in the accessory kit. They give you 2 different sizes, one to accommodate standard size fans and a longer one for thicker fans. And then you get exactly 4 rubber pieces. So all you have to do is put the screw in, making sure that the smaller portion is against the actual screw to give it enough space to lock it in place on the actual case. Then you would take your fan. This is a standard blade, so the fan will be facing this way. So make sure you screw in the opposite side. And this has the exact thickness as a case fan screw. And I would probably recommend not to screw it in all the way. Just give it enough space where you have enough space for the sliding mechanism to work perfectly. And then you repeat the same step on all corners. And once you have all of them in place, it'll be very easy for you to just slide them in. So you start from the back and then you can slide it towards you. Just like that. And then now you easily have that third fan attached. Now when it comes to positioning a third fan on the bottom, I'm most likely not going to have enough space because our PSU is going to be over here. So these 2 fans can definitely fit underneath, but the third fan underneath is not going to fit. So since I'm going to go for the 2 fan setup, I'm going to go ahead and remove this, of course. And finally, we can fit an additional 3 fans right on top, which is perfect for a top mounted AIO, which is what we're going to do on this 7950 X3D. And for the rear fan, we have a nice size 140mm fan. And what's great about all the pre-installed fans is that all of these wirings are wired behind the case and then hub. So I'm going to flip it real quick. So right on top in the back of the case, we have our hub over here, which Lian Li routed all the cables and have them already connected. The great thing about this hub too is that it also includes addressable RGB connectors here. And so if you want to add any type of RGB elements, let's say your AIO has an ARGB header, you can easily connect it here instead. Let's say you want to replace the fans with RGB fans, then you can easily connect the addressable RGB directly on this hub, which is really nice and convenient. So you have a total of you have a total of 4 adjustable RGB headers, which is really nice. Then we have a total of 5 fans already pre-attached. Now on this one over here, fan 2, completely empty here. This will be perfect for a third fan if you wanted to add that third fan. And then tucked over here is where our hub connectors are at. It is powered by a SATA Power connector, which gets connected to your PSU. We also have our PWM header here. This is going to control the RPM signals for all of these fans that are connected. And tucked really inside here, we also have an adjustable RGB header. So this gets connected directly to the motherboard. And so any type of adjustable RGB that you decide to add on here gets automatically routed to this hub, which is really nice and convenient. And so while we're back here, let's go ahead and connect this PWM and adjustable RGB, which again is completely optional. If you're not going to add any type of RGB fans, then you don't have to connect the ARGB. But for now, I want to connect these 2 connectors on the bottom of the motherboard, which is where most of the adjustable RGB and the PWM connectors are located. So this portion over here we just have to undo so that it can give us the extra length that's needed. So with that out, I can go ahead and push these cables more downward, push this a little bit more back. Push this back here. I love the cable management on this case. It's really good. And then we're going to route this on top, and we're going to connect these real quick just so that we have that out of the way. And then for the most of the bulk here, we can keep that in here. SATA Power, we're going to leave that towards the end. Let's go ahead and rotate the case. And so we should have the adjustable RGB and the PWM connector. But on this motherboard, our PWM connectors on the bottom are located on the right side. So once again, I'm just going to quickly push this fan out so I can easily show you guys what we're working with. So there are these 4-pin connectors for the PWM, and they're spread across the motherboard here. I have 2 additional ones, one over here as well, but I'd rather just put it on the bottom of the motherboard. And they're also labeled with different numbers, so I'm just gonna stick it to number 1, which is this one over here. And for the PWM connector, just make sure you match the tab. So on here, the tab's on the left side. So make sure you match the 4 pins and the tab. Just like that, we have the PWM connector for the hub. And then the addressable RGB, which is this one over here, will be connected to an addressable RGB header. Not the one that has 4 pins, but the ones that have 3 pins over here. You'll notice I have 2 headers on the bottom. There's another adjustable RGB header on the top right on this motherboard. But again, we're going to put it on the bottom. Go ahead and match the 3 pins. And if you're not going to have any RGB fans, then this connector is not really needed. But if you ever decide to add that in the future, it's good to know that you have that already connected. So if you ever add RGB in the future, then you know that your hub is already connected, and you can easily connect that on the back very seamlessly. Now real quick, I'm just going to undo this real quick, and I'm going to pass this underneath real quick. I want to make sure the cables are nice and hidden. And just to give you guys a close-up, we have the addressable RGB, and then we have the PWM connector. And again, these 2 are directly connected to the hub on the back of the case. So with that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and attach the AIO on top. So this top bracket can definitely be removed. There's only 2 screws holding it in, which is this screw and this screw over here. Go ahead and unscrew that real quick. With those 2 screws out of the way, you can easily lift this bracket up. That way we can easily attach our AIO directly on this bracket, so then we can reattach it to the case. Now that we have our top bracket out, we're now ready to install our AIO on the brackets. Or if you want to add 3 standard fans, you're more than welcome to do that as well. Now the AIO that I'm going for is going to be the TRYX Panorama SE. And they do have these fans already pre-installed and screwed in for you. However, keep in mind that the wires, by standard, they have them facing this side. And so if you want your tubes to be on the right side, the top mounted, the actual wires will be shown in front. So to avoid that, go ahead and unscrew all the fans, and then you can just basically rotate it all the way through so that the wires are now positioned this way, if you have the tubes on the right side. That way when I top mount it, this will be shown with no wires. So just keep that in mind depending on type of fans that your AIO has or brings. Just keep the wiring in mind. Every AIO might be different. So that's exactly what I'm doing here. And then we're going to take the same screws and screw all 12 fans in. Now that I have all 12 screws in with the wires facing the other side, now it's time to screw in the bracket, making sure that the tabs are on this side where the wires are at. And then one final note here, I do like to keep the bracket more centered because the more you have it against the actual radiator, then it's going to be more towards the right side. So just keep that in mind. Maybe you want to place it a little bit more centered. And then you grab your radiator screws and you screw all 12 screws in. All right, so I have all the screws here. Now, depending on the orientation of the bracket, you may only fit 10 screws, sometimes only 8. As long as you have the majority, you'll be perfectly fine. Last thing here that I'm going to connect before I attach in the case is the TRYX Panorama SE has a connector, which is this over here. And inside the box, you get the fan connector that connects to the female end. So I want to attach this first, so that way as I'm placing the AIO on top of the case, I can route this cable seamlessly. So with that connector, it allows me to easily connect the PWM and ARGB, which I'll show you guys how to connect. Now the top bracket, which your AIO already installed, remember that I have this connector here for the fans. What I'm going to do, I'm going to route this cable over this opening over here. So once again, I'm going to apply this cable over here. I'm going to pull that all the way through. That way it's out of the way. And now we can start positioning the top bracket on top with the case. Just keep in mind that you have those 3 tabs. You want to put it in an angle. Now if your pump is hanging, you can go ahead and gently place it on the case. And once you have the tabs in, go ahead and drop it down. And it should fit perfectly. And then you can just re-screw the 2 screws we just took out. All right, perfect. Now real quick, since we passed the connector on the back, that connector is now located here, and I have a couple of options that I can do with this. Since this does have a PWM, I can connect it directly to this hub if I wanted to, and easily just, you know, connect this, take one of these ARGB outs, and connect the ARGB this way. However, keep in mind that I'm personally not going to do that. This hub that connects all the fans will pretty much share the same PWM signal, and I want to be able to control the fans on the radiator separately. So in that type of scenario, I would have to connect this PWM separately into the actual motherboard. So what I'm going to do here is that since this adjustable RGB is conveniently here, I'll just connect the adjustable RGB here to the actual hub. That way, whatever devices I connect on this hub, they all will share the same color. That way I don't have to individually connect them. So that's connected in the back. And then this PWM, I'm just going to pass this right over here, and we'll see it on the opposite side, and then we'll cable manage this eventually. So I'm going to rotate this, and then right over here, we'll see that PWM connector. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this, and we're going to connect that along with the AIO pump header. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay the case flat down so we can install the pump header to the CPU. So let's go ahead and lay it flat. My recommendation is placing the AIO pump close to the motherboard as you're laying the case down. All right, now you're ready to attach the AIO pump, but real quick, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove this screen real quick to give us some space. If your AIO has a removable screen, then go ahead and just remove it so that way you have as much space as possible. We're going to have to remove these original pieces off the motherboard. So go ahead and grab a Phillips screwdriver and go ahead and start unscrewing these. Now on the TRYX AIO, I do have to reuse these screws. Depending on your AIO, you may or may not have to. And you can go ahead and remove these 2 pieces. I recommend just holding it just in case. And then I'm going to grab the AMD bracket here. If you're using Intel, of course, you will use an Intel bracket. But for this one here, we have CPU labeled with an arrow indicating where the CPU should be. So of course, this is going to be the bottom piece. And that's going to go over the screw holes that we just took off. And then this one with the CPU facing down would be the top one. And then reusing the screws, we're going to screw all of these in. Now that we have the bracket installed, we're now ready to attach the pump to the actual CPU. Now keep in mind that most AIOs will have pre-installed thermal paste. The TRYX does have pre-applied thermal paste. However, I am reusing this one. So at this moment, there's no thermal paste. So it's up to you if you want to use your own favorite thermal paste. You can easily remove it, wipe it off, and you use whatever favorite one you're going to use. I'll be using the Arctic MX4 thermal compound, and we're going to place that directly on top of our CPU here. So let's go ahead and do that. Now for the MX4, I'm going to go for an X pattern. I'm just going to cap it off quickly. And next up here, we're going to grab our AIO, and then we want to position the bracket over the actual screws. And then for the TRYX Panorama, we have a spring and we have a thumb screw here. And so we're going to attach the spring over the screw and screw in the thumb screw on top. And so what I like to do here is I like to just screw it in just a little bit and screw in all the rest of it. Now that I have all 4 screws in, now we can go ahead and connect AIO pump header and also the header for these 3 fans on top. It should have it listed on the headers as well. Now for the case of this specific motherboard, the X870E AORUS Pro Ice, on these 3 headers, there are no AIO pump headers. And so I'm going to connect this to the CPU fan, which is the one directly in the middle. So I'm going to route this cable on top here. I'm going to place this right in the middle. And finally for this over here, this is the 4-pin PWM and it's going to control these 3 fans. So I'm going to connect this where it says CPU optional, or I can connect this directly to system fan 4. Either or works. Again, it's all going to depend on your motherboard, of course. And so I'm just going to go ahead and connect that where it says CPU optional, because the fans are attached to the radiator and that's going to correlate the temperatures of the CPU, of course. And then you can go ahead and cable manage as much as you can. Next, we're going to take our LCD screen cover. And if you have an LCD screen, then you are definitely going to have an internal USB header, and this will get directly connected to the motherboard, but you want to make sure you pass the cable behind the actual case. And now the good news is that since this is a back connect motherboard, there is some space to pass this internal header, so I'm just going to pass it right there, and then we'll connect that after we connect this. And the TRYX Panorama SE has 2 different orientations, so I can put the screen like this, like a nice little waterfall, or I can have it on the right side, or I can even switch it to the left side. I think for now I'm just going to leave it this way. And so let's go ahead and lift the case up. And this is how we're looking so far with the AIO installed. And so since we have the USB of this LCD screen on the back, let's go ahead and flip that over and connect that real quick. All right, so here is the internal USB header. Now the great thing here is that the cable runs literally right in the middle where all these Velcro straps are at. So we can easily manage it by just undoing the Velcro and running the cable behind the Velcro strap, so we can easily cable manage. And while we're up here, I'm going to take the excess of this cable and position this on top, kind of put this inside the Velcro strap just to contain it. Now with the internal USB, we're going to route this right on top of here. I'm just going to pull that real quick with my other hand, and I'm going to rotate the case. All right, and now we're at the front here, and this should be the internal header that you just picked up. And you want to look at your motherboard's layout, but generally we want to find where the internal USB headers are at, and make sure you match the missing pin. It's a total of 9 pins with 1 missing. I just have enough space to squeeze this one in, and now we have that USB connected for the LCD screen. I'm just going to go ahead and pass this wire down, and now our AIO is fully connected. All right, so next step is to install our PSU, and I'm going to be going for the Red Dragon 1000 watt gold rated white PSU to match the aesthetics. Now the great thing about the LANCOOL 217 is that we actually have 2 ways of mounting our PSU. Now I have the case front facing to show you that by default, we have this opening over here to actually install our PSU here, or you also have the traditional way of mounting the PSU. By removing these 4 screws, you can attach your PSU traditionally this way, so you can have the power connector located on here. But as you'll notice on the bottom left, you have another AC input here. And that is because on the inside of the case, and we have an AC power extender that basically routes the connector if the PSU is facing that way. And the great thing about that is that when you have the PSU installed with the input facing the opposite side, you now have all of the cables facing in the front, making it easier to cable manage. The other way, having this traditionally to the right, now you have the PC cables on the left side, making cable management a little bit more difficult. So I like the fact that Lian Li gives you both options, and this is the option that I'm going to go for to take advantage of this right angle AC power adapter. Now another note here is that you'll notice these cables can make it difficult to slide your PSU in, and so right on the inside there is a little kind of like a raceway that you can kind of like tuck your cables in, and you want to make sure you tuck any type of thick cable that you might have, just so that the PSU can slide easily. And then finally, this case supports PSUs up to 180 millimeter in length, and you have 2 ways to install it. You can have the fan facing upwards, or you can have the fan facing downwards, which is the method that I'm personally going to use because this has rubber feet that lifts up the actual PSU, and so it is going to be intaking cold air. Having the fans this way will be intaking air from inside the case. So I think personally, it might be a better option to just have it facing downward. And there are filters on the bottom as well, which is really nice. Go ahead and grab your PSU. Make sure your fan is on the bottom. Make sure the AC inputs is facing that way. And then you can easily slide the PSU in. All the way in. And now I'm going to flip it over so I can show you exactly what it looks like. So we have the PSU over here. So go ahead and guide it right where the mounting holes are at. And you should have a total of 4 screws that you can easily mount with PSU screws. So I'm going to take the PSU mounting screws. You can find these in your PSU accessory kit or in the accessory kit of the Lian Li. I'm using the one that came with the Lian Li. And we're just going to screw all 4 in. All right, now all 4 screws are in. And then we're going to take this extender here. And then you just slide that right in. And now we have the AC plug perfectly routed. Now the only downside of having it this way is that once you have the mesh panel cover over, you don't easily have access to these switches here. Just keep that in mind that if you're gonna have the PSU routed this way, you are gonna have to remove the mesh panel so that you can easily have access to these buttons. Or if you have, let's say, a smart fan control button here, just keep that in mind. But now that we know that right angle that I showed you now is located on the back, which is perfect. And so now that we have our PSU installed, we're now ready to plug in our power connector. So I'm going to go over each one of these cables so that way you know which cables you need. Starting off with the easiest one to identify, this is going to be your 24-pin motherboard connector. Very easy to find since this has the largest connector, so we definitely going to need to use one of these. Next up is going to be your CPU power connectors, and they should say CPU on them. And depending on your motherboard, it might call for 2 of these, maybe just 1, or a combination of 2 with 1 being split off. For our motherboard, we're going to be using 2 of these. Next up, if you have an ATX 3.0 or above PSU, then you're going to notice this infamous cable. This is the 12-volt high power cable for NVIDIA graphics card like the 40 series or 50 series that utilizes this specific connector. Since I'm going to be using the RTX 5080, I'm going to be using this cable. And if your graphics card does not have that 12-volt high power input, then you also get PCIe power connectors as well. Most PSUs give you 3, and depending on your graphics card, some might take 1, some might take 2, maybe very power hungry ones might take 3. Some other peripherals also might take a PCIe connector as well. But in this specific build, we're not going to use any of these PCIe connectors unless if you have a graphics card that calls for this connector, so we can put these away. Next up is going to be your SATA power connectors, and these power up hubs, certain LCD screens, things like that. Now, since our Lian Li case has an internal hub already embedded, we are going to need at least 1 internal SATA power. So we're going to be using one of these cables. And the last connector you're going to see are going to be your Molex connectors. And these are for connecting very old style peripherals. I personally have never used this connector, so in this build, we're not going to be using this at all. So to summarize, in this build, we're going to be using the motherboard connector, 2 CPU power connectors, 1 12-volt high power cable for our GPU, and finally a SATA power connector. Now we're ready to connect our PSU connectors here. I'm going to start off with the CPU connectors. And the AORUS Pro Eyes takes 2 8-pin connectors, which is on the top left. And there's just enough space to route the cable right on top of that opening over there. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this end with the tab up, and I'm just going to quickly connect both of them on these 2 connectors. So you hear a nice click. All right, next we're going to grab one end of the cable, and we're going to pass that right in that opening over here. You can kind of see my finger over here. And we're going to pass that right through. And with your other hand, you want to grab it and pull it. Same thing for the other side. All right, so now we have both CPU passed through. And next we're going to grab our motherboard 24-pin connector. We're going to locate the largest part, which is this one. The other side, which has 2 separate inputs, are going to be connected to the PSU. Starting with the big connector, you're going to locate this tab. It's going to be connected on the right side, which is this really large connector here. So go ahead and connect it. Push it right in, and all this excess we can pass it through this grommet over here. Other hands, go ahead and grab it. Now they have both motherboard and CPU. Let's go ahead and rotate the case. Now this is the back side. All right, so the great thing about the LANCOOL 217 is that you'll notice that using these tabs in the corner, I can easily reroute the CPU power connectors right underneath this tab. Same thing on here. All the way down here. And I absolutely love that feature because that just saves a lot of time, and it just makes it look beautiful, which I really appreciate. And now we have our CPU connectors right down here. And since we're already here, let's go ahead and connect it. And depending on your PSU, all you have to do is locate where it says CPU connectors, and a lot of them are shared with the PCIe, so I can connect the CPU power on any one of these. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect it right on top. All right, so both of these are now connected. And finally, for the motherboard cable, which is this one over here, let's see how we can route this here. I can choose to route it here. Yeah, I think I'm going to do that actually. So I'm going to use this Velcro strap over here to easily route the motherboard 24 pin. And then to connect it is very easy. It's going to be these two connectors, starting with the big one. Goes in nice and smooth. All right, now both of these are now connected. And the great thing about this case too is that there are some openings here to attach Velcro straps. So that's exactly what I'm going to do. Appreciate Lian Li for thinking about cable management. So I'm going to attach one right over here. I can easily tame these cables. And then the CPU cables, I'll just push them over here. And I am really content with that cable management so far. Now the next one that we're going to connect is going to be the fan hub. So this is a SATA power connector that basically powers this hub that you see right above here. And just double check your connectors here. Sometimes depending on how we're moving the cables, some of them could get a little bit loose. And so like I showed you guys earlier, we're going to be using the SATA power PSU connector here, and they're going to be 6 pins. And on your PSU, you're going to locate where it says SATA, which in this PSU is going to be on here. And we get a total of 4 SATA power connectors. However, we don't really need to use all of these, and you can use zip ties if you'd like, whichever one makes you happy. That way when I connect this, I don't need that much length, so I'm just going to connect this on the top right, just to give me enough space so that I can have one of these SATA power connectors facing upwards. And I'm going to pull this down. Now I can easily connect this one SATA power connector. Now I can just push all of these in, and I still have access to these 2 SATA power connectors for any additional devices that may need SATA power, whether that be a hard drive or another hub. You can still have access to those too. And now we're almost done. The last cable that we need to tackle is going to be your GPU cable. In this case, I'm using a 12-volt high power cable. The 12-volt high power connector connects right over here. So the first thing I want to do is I want to connect the GPU first, connect this cable, and figure out what would be the best way to route the GPU cable, and then we can connect that at the end. However you want to do it, but for now, let's go ahead and face this case in the front. We're almost at the finish line if you're just going to do a horizontal mount, of course. Now we're ready to install our GPU, and the one that I'm going to go for is going to be the MSI Gaming Trio 5080, a beautiful white graphics card. Now there's 2 ways to mount this. You have your standard horizontal. You could also vertically mount it by switching these slots over. I am going to show you that as well. So if you want to skip ahead and see exactly how I install this vertically, you definitely can. If you're going to do a horizontal mount, then we're pretty much almost done here. The only thing we need to do here is to remove some of these PCIe slot covers depending on how many your GPU is, and that's going to depend on the thickness of your GPU. This Gaming Trio only needs 2 PCIe slots to be removed, which is going to be the second and the third slot. And so with the screwdriver, let's go ahead and remove the PCIe slots. All right, now that we have our PCIe slots removed, installing our graphics card is going to be very straightforward. Then look at PCIe slot cover, you're going to notice this notch. We're going to match that notch directly on this notch as well. And so be nice and gentle, of course. Once you're close in, you can go ahead and push it all the way in. And now, using the same screws you just removed for the PCIe slot cover, position this more to the left so you can see the screws. I'm going to go ahead and screw this right over here. Depending on how heavy your graphics card is, you may have to lift it up a little bit with your fingers so you can access the screw holes. And keep in mind that this does have an anti-GPU built into the case, which I'm definitely going to adjust. All right, perfect. And then this little thing here is to adjust the anti-sag, and it's basically a thumb screw that you can locate right on the back and unscrew with your fingers, or it might be tight enough so you may have to unscrew it with a screwdriver. All right, so I just unscrewed that real quick, and I'll show you guys on the back what it looks like, but it has a nice soft rubber piece so that it doesn't damage the actual graphics card. And then you basically want to just position this and just pay attention to your graphics card, and you might have to just lift it up just a little bit, and then you just screw it in. And then that's how you adjust the anti-sag bracket here, which is really nice. And now the final connector is going to be our 12-volt high power cable, or your PCIe, depending on your graphics card, of course. All right, and so what I'm going to do for the 12-volt high power cable is I'm going to pass it underneath And so I'm going to pass it right underneath first. Turn the case over, see where that landed. All right, now our 12-volt high power connector is located right beneath. I'm just going to take just enough and make sure you connect this all the way through. That's the most important thing when it comes to the 12-volt high power cable. You want to make sure we push it all the way in. And I'm going to slowly start pulling the cable from the other side. And so again, that's one way of doing it, or you can position the 12-volt high power cable this way, whichever one you want to do. And we're going to flip the case over. And now all we have to do is connect our 12-volt high power cable, which on this PSU is this connector right over here on the top left. And we're just going to connect that real quick. Same thing, we're going to make sure we connect it all the way through. Make sure you push it. Perfect. And since I added a Velcro strap on the bottom, I can go ahead and reuse it. So I can tame all of this cable. All right, perfect. So now our cables are perfectly managed, and as you can see, there's so much space in the front here, and we still have a lot of space over here to add hard drives or whatever you want over here. And even if you had the PSU positioned the opposite side, you still got a lot of space to reroute all of your cables whenever if you have to. But I love the fact that it's right in the front, making it easier to connect. And now let's look at the front. So if you're gonna go the horizontal mount way, then you're pretty much done. You can go ahead and assemble your case, or you can skip ahead if you want to vertically mount your GPU. Keep in mind that if we're vertically mounting, we're gonna move these two fans right on the bottom so we can give us space to vertically mount our GPU. All right, so now we're ready to fully assemble the whole case. Oh, let's get the back piece here and snap it into place. All right, next we're going to rotate this case all the way over. All right, next we're gonna grab the top mesh panel, which is very easy to put back on. Just snaps into place. Definitely loving this wood accents. Before we can put the glass panel, we do have to put the bottom panel in first. And because we have the PSU in this position, the PSU switch needs to be turned on, because once we cover it, we do have to remove the glass and this to have access to this again. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you put that in the on position. And if you ever need to go back and change it, removing the glass panel could be a little tedious, but it's really not that bad since it's very easy to just remove. It slides in easy with a simple thumb screw. So once we have that bottom panel, we can then grab our glass side panel, and we can position it on top and snap it into place very easily. And the final thing that we have to reinstall is going to be our front. Before we install this front piece, Lian Li does give you a filter to put in the front of the case if you wanted to. It snaps in very easily, just like this. And what it does, it basically filters out the air more effectively. However, important to note that you don't really need to install this. You can just install it without that filter. It's there, and I like the fact that they do include it for those that really want to use it. And with that, this build is pretty much done. I'm going to move this to the corner of my desk and power everything on. All right, before powering it on here, we can see how it looks like sitting on the corner of my white desk here. And I gotta say that this white color with the beech wood accent looks really nice in an all white setup. Now, of course, they do have the black version with a darker walnut wood, but I think this white looks really nice and very sleek. All right, so let's fire it up on the side. 3, 2. All right, we got everything booted up here. At the moment, the only RGB elements that we have are going to be the fans from the AIO, the motherboard, the RGB from our RAM, and the RGB from the GPU. And of course, you can shut off all the RGB for a very minimalistic design. And as you can see here, just pop this cover here real quick. You can see those oversized 170mm fans. And I gotta say that everything definitely does run pretty quiet thanks to those very large fans and superior airflow. I want to show you guys how easy it is to change the orientation of the two 170mm fans. Now, by default, they have it pre-installed in this orientation here, which they refer to it as the GPU mode. But if you wanted more airflow going more towards the CPU, you can change the positioning of both of these fans to be at an even higher position. You'll notice these two white tabs where we can easily remove this little tab over here. So you just pick that right out. It comes out very easily. So we're going to easily take both of them out. And you're going to notice a higher mounting hole here so that you can easily reposition these fans. So I'm going to first show you how it looks like from this angle, and then I'm going to show you the other angle as well. But all you have to do is just lift this up and you'll be able to push it out. Once you have that pushed out, you can lift the fan higher. And once you have them in the mounting holes, you can go ahead and push it down to lock it into place. But when it comes to installing the bottom one, just push it back up again before locking into place real quick. And I'm going to show you the different angle real quick. All right, now showing you this angle, we just once again lift this thing and position this bottom fan higher. Now there is going to be enough length, so you don't have to do anything else. You may have to kind of wiggle the cable a little bit sometimes. And you want to go all the way up. Once you have the fan in, you can go ahead and push it down to lock it in place. And same thing with the top fan, we can lock that one in place as well. Now that we have both fans in, we can reattach the tabs, because now you're going to notice 2 additional slots that you can put these in. So they make it very easy to make that change. And so now we're on CPU mode, where both of these fans is positioned higher, which, as you can see from the positioning here, all of that airflow is now being directed to the top portion of the case. You don't have much airflow going into the bottom of the case anymore. And so this is why they refer to it as the CPU mode. I think the CPU mode would be more optimal for those of you guys that have an air cooler. But again, it's up to personal preference. But I like the fact that Lian Li gives you both options. I'm going to dim the lights real quick so we can get a better look at how everything looks. All right, here's how we're looking with all the lights dimmed, with all the RGB set to a white color. You can see the RGB is very noticeable when it's very dark out. You can definitely see the inside of the case. I like how the RGB from the top illuminates the top of the case here, which is really nice. I'm going to shut off all the lights so you can see exactly how it looks like. Finally, with all my lights on, with 0 RGB, just fans blowing in some cold air. Even the GPU is off. Everything looks nice and sleek, so definitely an awesome case for a nice minimalistic look. And so even having minimal RGB still makes it look very subtle for those of you guys that don't want to have so much RGB on your case. I want to show you guys how to do a vertical mount with just a riser cable. All right, next thing I want to show you guys is how to vertically mount your GPU using the built-in vertical mounting feature that this case offers. And so there's only one thing that you really need to get separately from the case. If you want to vertically mount your GPU, you're going to have to get a riser cable. And the one that I'm using here is by Okino's. And this is a PCIe Gen 5. And currently they are very expensive. I recommend looking for a more budget-friendly riser cable, maybe like a Gen 4. But hopefully by the time you watch this video, they become more affordable. And so the first thing here that we're going to do is we're going to position the fans into the bottom. And to do that, we have to first rotate the case. And the reason why we have to rotate the case is because this is right now is being held. So we just have to undo this twist. So that gives enough length for your fans to be able to dip down below. Now that we made those adjustments, like I showed you earlier, these fans can be easily removed by just pushing these fans and then pulling them out. You can use your fingers on each corner if you wanted to make it easy. And so to ensure that these fans are still intaking air, we do have to reposition these screws with the rubber piece on the opposite side. And so go ahead and take your screwdriver and unscrew each of these. And then as you remove them, just place them on the opposite side. So you want to repeat this with all the screws on both fans. All right, now that I have all the screws on top, the next thing here is install an additional bracket on this side of the case to give us more space to move the fan more towards the right. And so inside the accessory box, you're going to find these 2 accessories. You're going to grab the long piece, and you're also going to grab 2 screws here. This piece is going to use one of the screws in first. I'll show you where the second one goes. It's going to go right in those 2 little slots. So I love the fact that they really thought about this. So you just position this on top, drop this down, and then you screw that in. And so now that that's in, that's going to create 2 additional mounting screw slots so that we can position the right fan all the way to the right. because without that, positioning both of these fans down would conflict with the PSU. But now that we have all 4 screws in, we can go ahead and slide it back. That's very easy. We do the same thing for the second fan. And the great thing is that we have a ton of space. Now to move some of these wires out the way. Slide that back in. Definitely love that mechanism of sliding. Definitely something that I have not experienced. And now as you can see, we have both fans now mounted on the bottom position. And you're gonna notice that we have this gap here now. And so we're gonna grab this piece. We're gonna locate that little tab, and that's gonna go right in there. Just like that. And then we take another screw. All right, now that we have that in, the next step here is in your accessory box, you're gonna locate 2 standoff screws. You can have it in these 2 separate positions and they're offsetted. We have more of a top position, so the GPU is sitting more closer to the motherboard, away from the glass. And then we have another one that's a little bit closer to the glass, but I think I'm gonna maybe stick with the forward position and see how that goes. You're gonna locate this tool. Also in the accessory kit, this is where you found the motherboard screws, and this is a Phillips socket. You're gonna put that in, and you should be able to now screw in the standoff. I think having these standoffs in the forward position would probably be easier for me to fit my GPUs. All right, next thing here, you want to grab your riser cable. Now, I probably recommend going with something shorter. I think this was like 200 centimeters. I think 150 or even 100 is perfect. So I'm going to first slot this in on the motherboard first. All right, so now that's slotted in. And then I'm going to grab the bottom piece and I'm going to bend or push it to the back and position the 2 screw holes of the riser. And so to screw in the PCI riser, you're going to use the same screws you use for the motherboard. They're the ones that have that rounded circle over it. All right, so now that's screwed in. The only thing that I'm seeing here is that I don't have enough thread. Just barely makes it. All right, so a few adjustments that I had to make just to make sure everything kind of fit in, because it could be very tricky depending on which riser cable you have and how flexible it is when it comes to the different mounting positions you have. Unfortunately, I don't have many options for this riser to screw in on the left side, whereas you'll see here I have a lot of adjustments to position this screw, but I don't have much adjustments for this one. And so to ensure that everything kind of lines up so that the GPU slots in the actual vertical mounts, which are these 2 holes over here, I did have to move the positioning of the right screw, and so I can't screw in the left screw. So you'll notice that it has some play here. Now, once I mount the GPU and screw it in, and it's really not going to go anywhere, the final thing here is now is to switch this whole slot. And what I really like about this case is that if we rotate the case, you're going to notice 4 screws right on the back here. And so all we have to do is unscrew all 4. And so this whole piece comes out, which is awesome and convenient. And now what we're going to do is we're going to position where the screws are. We want that now on top, so that when we slot in our GPU, we can then screw it in from the top. So we're going to slide that right back in. And you'll see that the screws align again. All right, now we have all 4 screws in. And now we are ready to vertically mount our GPU. This might be easier. I might have to remove this again because I don't have a lot of space to remove these slots. And another thing too is that for you to even screw in the GPU, this top fan makes it almost impossible to screw in. So I have loosened it up to give me that space, so I can screw in and then I have to re-screw in this top fan. I'm gonna grab the GPU. I'm gonna line it up. So as you can see right over there, it now slots in there. So that's why I had to move the positioning of the screw. And I'm just gonna push it back down. All right, so now that's locked in. Next thing here is to screw in the screw that we just took off of the PCIe slot. And now that I have this rear fan unscrewed, kind of have my hand holding the top fan so that I can then, with my other hand, kind of grab the GPU a little bit, and then I can screw it in. It's really hard to see, but a smaller screwdriver would definitely help. Little things that we have to do to make things work. And so vertically mounting it with the riser cable is a little bit tricky on this case, and I don't want to remove all the cables because then that's going to be a hassle, so I'd rather just keep it in mid-air. And now we have the second screw in. Now we have the GPU successfully mounted, and so I'm going to quickly screw in this fan again. It's on the opposite side, and I'm going to screw it in the same position that it was in. Alright, and just like that, we have the GPU vertically mounted. Personally, for me, I really love the look of a vertical GPU mounts. Alright, so I have everything powered on, and I really love that vertical GPU mount look, especially when it showcases the Gaming Trio's RGB lighting that you can't really see when it's horizontally mounted. So of course, it's going to depend on which GPU you actually have. So if you're going to be using an AIO and you want to do the vertical mounts with the riser cable, then I think having it more close to the glass makes more sense. I'm going to re-add the glass panel real quick. So with the glass panel on, it instantly looks a million times better because the extra white bezels of this glass does cover up very nicely. And so I'd say that this would be the only downside of having your fans on the bottom, is that if you look at the case from the top, it just doesn't have like a seamless design. However, I do appreciate Lian Li for still giving us the option to easily vertically mount our GPU by switching the PCIe slots, and obviously being able to position these fans in either on the top or on the bottom. Now you're currently seeing the GPU fans kick in because I am currently running a stress test here. And what I've noticed so far when it comes to the airflow of this case, it is incredible. Even when I have the GPU vertically mounted, I'm getting the same GPU temps as I did having it horizontally mounted. And it really has to do with how much space we have between the glass and the GPU. Now, of course, it's going to depend on the thickness of your GPU, but I'm going to try to see if I can show you a little bit closer. Whether you're going to do a vertical or horizontal, you're going to get exceptional cooling performance on your GPU. So building in the Lian Li LANCOOL 217 has been an awesome experience, and I love the way they designed it with the trendy real-world accents. The pre-installed fans, cable management, built-in anti-GPU sag, and the unique PSU mounting options make this an extremely easy case to build in, which I think adds a lot of value for only $125 for the white color. The black will launch at $119.99 for those that want a darker and stealthier look. I haven't personally done a build in a predecessor, the LANCOOL 216, but I can clearly see the additional two bottom fans and extra space you get with the LANCOOL 217 makes it a more complete package for better airflow and customizations. I want to thank Lian Li for sending this case out to me so I can showcase and make this awesome build for you guys. All components will be listed down below, along with affiliate links that help and support my channel. And finally, I want to thank you and all of my followers who spend their time watching my videos. I really value your time, so hopefully this guide helped you in your journey to create an awesome LANCOOL 217 gaming PC. I'll catch you guys on the next one. Firewolf out.